Listen, community is important, and I will never tell you that it is not. But like the right community though, like not just anybody, like it's got to be like the right. But what is also important that is not spoken about so much is the importance of being alone with yourself so that you can reflect on how you feel about experiences and things without the influence and presence of others. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today in this week's training. Hey, what's up? I am Johnna Renée, certified evidence-based life coach, here to teach you all of the ish I wish someone would have told me about self-acceptance, self-discovery, and self-love so that you can become who it is that you need to be in order to live the life that you want. And I do that by using research-backed techniques to help you create sustainable behavioral changes. And so I'm going to be sharing some ish I wish someone told me today and some of those techniques in order to help support you with the concept of aloneness and how it serves you. So I first want to touch on what I'm talking about, right? And when I say being alone, I don't mean being alone scrolling, right? Like, I don't mean scrolling. Oh, I got some messages. I don't mean being alone scrolling alone. I don't mean being alone, like watching television. I don't mean being alone with a book or even your pet. I mean just being alone with yourself and your thoughts and being mindful of how you're actually spending that time. Are you looking for the next distraction? Or are you asking yourself what's on your mind? How are you feeling? And why are you feeling that way? Right? Are you thinking about the things that have been going on, what's been working, what hasn't, and what's important? That is what I mean when it comes to being alone, right? Really, really being alone and thinking about what it is that you're feeling, like just being, not trying to meditate, not trying to, do anything, just being. That's what we're talking about. And the reason this is so important is because you spend the most time with yourself, right? And you need to have a healthy relationship with that person. Because while, yes, like I said, community is extremely important, whether you're conscious or not, you're influenced by the community that you're around. It's biology, we learn by mimicry. And so it's important that you spend some solo time to reflect on what it is that you are personally thinking about a certain topic, experience, or like I said, even the person that you spent time with. Did they, give you energy? Did they take it away? Were you exhausted after you spent time because you were doing their emotional labor or keeping up some facade to entertain them or keep their spirits high? Or are you feeling energized because you were able to be yourself and you were able to engage in stimulating conversation? You know, these kinds of things. And these are kinds of things that while we may think, well, I can do that with people around, it's not the same. It's not the same. And I encourage and invite you to test out that theory. I want you to think about, what you think about something while someone's sitting right next to you that, might have an opposing or even a similar view. And then I want you to spend some time thinking about that thing by yourself with no one in the room, with no one, maybe even in the house or apartment, with just no one around. And so that's why it's so important. That's what I mean. Mindfully being by yourself and, taking the time to know what's important for you. And when it comes to actually doing this, it's something where it can be scary if you're not used to being alone. So many of us aren't, right? So many of us grew up with parents or siblings, and then we moved in with roommates and then, partners. And it might be something where you've never actually truly been alone. And so the first thing that I suggest is knowing what you need to self regulate, right? Because there might be times when you are sitting alone initially, and maybe even after you've done it for years, where you start to feel some kind of way, some feelings come up, you start thinking about this bad thing that happened that you've been distracting yourself from, so you haven't dealt with it. And so when you're sitting alone, it starts to come up and you start to feel uncomfortable and you don't want to think about it. And you start to notice that you are entering into a state that doesn't feel good. You need to know, first of all, to be aware of that, and then how to self regulate yourself. Do you need to identify objects in the room? Do you need to try some breathing techniques? Do you need to just tell yourself, hey, that was then, this is now, and now I am safe? Do you need to go for a walk? What is it that you need to do? Those are just some examples. And in my self discovery video, part one, I go over some self regulation tools. So definitely check that out. I will link it below. And the second thing, whenever it comes to being alone, is decide what feels safest to you right now. If you're someone who, like I said, has never spent time alone, then start small. Maybe you don't, want to go on a vacation by yourself or, spend time alone if you've experienced some trauma. Maybe it looks like telling your roommate or your partner that, like, hey, I'm going to go do some focused work in my room for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes. And so, if you could just, give me some space, but stay in the house. Like, let me know that you're here, kind of a thing, right? And if you want, you can even tell them, hey, I'm going to go, try to be alone with myself. Like, whenever we're transparent, it shows others how to do the same and be that way as well. And so if you're comfortable being vulnerable and sharing what you're doing, I encourage you and invite you to do that. It might also look like taking yourself on a date and just observing how comfortable or uncomfortable you are with even that notion. Or like where it's uncomfortable for you. Is it like walking to the restaurant? Is it like sitting by yourself? Is it being alone at the movies? Like where and when are you uncomfortable? And then asking yourself why, if you feel safe to do so. So there are levels to this, right? There are levels and different things are going to feel good to you, and that's going to change. And so it's important to know like where to start and what feels good to you right now. The third thing that I want to touch on is that when you're alone, just be, right? Like I mentioned this in the beginning, but just be, just see what comes up. Is it a feeling? Is it, you know, a situation where you feel relieved? Is it a situation where you feel anxious? It might be, like I said, something where you recognize that you're thinking about something from the past, and it might be something that's so uncomfortable that you do need a distraction, right? That you do need to phone a friend, that you do need to go in that toolkit, your self-regulation tools, and figure out what it is that you need so that you can bring yourself back to that calm state, back to that equilibrium, back to that feeling of safety. Because the more that you become comfortable in this practice, the easier it's going to be for next time. Like you're training yourself, right? Just like if you would be training yourself for a workout, or how to read or write or walk or anything like that, you're training yourself on an emotional level to notice these uncomfortable feelings, and you're training yourself how to regulate in those situations so that you can become more resilient and be able to navigate them more successfully in the future. And yeah, it becomes something where instead of being in this reactive space where you don't recognize that you are feeling or experiencing an altered state, that you're becoming agitated until you're in the moment, you can actually reach a level and a point where you are able to proactively identify, like, hey, I think that situation, based on what I know about myself and my experience, that situation is probably one that would put me in an aroused state. So, what do I need to do in order to prevent that from happening? Is that to avoid the situation? Is that to, again, like tell yourself, sometimes just the awareness of like, hey, this situation might put me in an aroused or an agitated state. Then, let me be mindful, let me know, like going into this, that like I'm safe, like whatever you need to pull out from your toolkit, whatever tool you need. Sometimes that in and of itself will be enough to help you actually experience that thing that you thought might put you in an agitated state in a way that is more calm. And so, like I said, whenever you are in the practice of doing this, it becomes something where you're able to proactively recognize certain situations and circumstances and people that might actually agitate you so that you can do what you need to do in order to prevent that from happening in the first place, which puts you in a place of power and certainty and control. And whenever we do that, that makes us feel safe. That's a primal need. It's all good stuff. So, wanted to share this with you. And this is a pretty quick one today, just on the importance of being alone. I had an entire awesome conversation about this for Should I Wish Someone Told Me. It is episode 50 with my friend Josh. And so make sure to check that out if you want to learn more about this. Hear what we have to say, hear his experience, and some more of mine as well. We talk about this in detail. This was a Cliff Notes version for you. And so um, definitely check that out. I will link it below. Comment and let me know how your experience with aloneness is, or what your experience with aloneness is like, rather. Is it something that you avoid? Is it something that now after watching this video, you're like, oh, actually, when I'm alone, I'm scrolling on social media or I'm watching television. And so you're doing something to distract yourself. So you're not actually being. So let me know, because I'm curious, because most people, and we talk about what our viewers and listeners had responded in the poll results as well in the episode. And yeah, it was something where, most of us are in a space where we distract. But some of us, not so much. Some of us engage in like self-care activities, but at the same time, those are still things of doing, right? Those are still actions and not being. And that is my invitation for you to just spend a little bit of time, even if it's 5 minutes, just being. And I talk about that in the episode as well. I do something called the sunrise and sit, where I just sit and watch the sunrise. That is it. No agendas, no, intentions other than to just be in that moment. And again, sometimes it lasts for 5 minutes. Sometimes that's all I have. Sometimes it's more like 35. Just depends on the day and yeah, like what I'm needing. And so that is my invitation to you to just spend some time with yourself and see what it is that you need. So that's what I have for you today. I hope this was helpful. Like I said, comment and let me know what your thoughts are on this and being alone. And check out the episode. It is a good one. And I will see you next week. Thank you and have an awesome day. Bye.